I'm Janine. This is KUCI 88.9 FM in Irvine, and this is Get the Funk Out. Standing by to join me is director, producer, and writer Varda Bar-Kar, and we're going to talk about her latest film, Fandango at the Wall. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Where are you connecting from?
I am in Santa Monica, California.
So let's jump into your film. How did you come up with the concept?
Well, basically, it's what happened is that, I'd finished my film Big Voice, as you know.
Yes.
And I'd sort of taken it through to, I had this vision, I wanted at least 1 million people to see it. So that had been realized. And so then I was thinking, well, what do I want to do next? And I had also, started to direct for TV a little bit. So that's, something that I've been doing. But I also, really felt, I feel moved to make documentaries to speak into, the way the world is. And I also kind of really love making documentaries, I realized. So I got, somewhat disheartened about the way that, immigrants were being treated and talked about, and in particular, our neighbors to the south in Mexico and South America. And so I was really caught up with that. And I was thinking, maybe I can do something about that with music, because I really enjoy working in those two mediums together.
Yes.
And then I read a Facebook post, if you can believe it, in Film Fatale. I'm part of a group called Film Fatale, which is women directors group.
Great.
And it said, someone is a friend of mine, it was from another filmmaker, and she said, a friend of mine is looking for someone to film a border festival, between the United States and Mexico. And I was immediately, it was just like with Big Voice, I just got this really big hit. Like, this is it.
This is it.
And so through a series of phone calls, I was eventually connected with Kabir Segal, who is the executive producer and producer of Fandango at the Wall. And he told me about this festival, Fandango Fronterizo. And he and I started speaking. And as we were speaking, we really have this mind meld. We have a lot of, something about us is similar. We're very, very different, but there's this connection we have. And as we were speaking, this whole film kind of unfolded.
Amazing.
And that's how it happens. And then, we thought of the title, and I played with the different titles, and I thought Fandango at the Wall is fun because it's taking this thing, which is like the wall, the barrier that has all these negative connotations. Yes. And we're making something really fun and joyful, which is a fandango,
Yes. So tell me what it was like making the film.
Sorry, I don't know if you can hear this.
It's fine.
Okay. It was a really joyous, beautiful, super hyper challenging experience. We filmed, at the border between the United States and Mexico, and we filmed the festival, which happens on both sides, between Tijuana and San Diego. That had its own unique set of challenges. We had like 5 different camera crews going simultaneously. The way the film works is we actually follow Arturo Farrell, who's the founder conductor of the Afroland Jazz Orchestra, based in New York City.
Okay.
And he had read an article actually about Fandango Fronterizo. And a lot of what he does is kind of create bridges through music with different cultures. His mother was Mexican. She had recently died. And when he read about it, he thought, I've got to go there. And Kabir and Arturo have done several albums together.
That's fantastic.
And so they had joined up to do this project. And so what we did is we followed Arturo to Veracruz, Mexico, which is where the Masters of San Horacio live. And the festival, Fandango Fronterizo, which is at the heart of the film, is a San Horacio festival. San Horacio is a 300-year-old, very mystical Mexican folk music tradition that combines indigenous, African, and Spanish traditions.
That's beautiful.
It's really beautiful. And it's rooted in Veracruz, Mexico, which is all the way on the other side of Mexico, way, way, way south. So we went there, and we, some of them live in the most remote areas you can imagine. I mean, we literally had to drive for like 6 or 7 hours on dirt roads and arrived at these like family compounds where they live on a river, or they live in this kind of like, almost feels like an ancient village.
It sounds like it.
Gorgeous. So it's an opportunity for our viewers, to kind of go on this adventure with us. It's a very immersive experience, somewhat like Big Voice in that way.
Did you know much about this topic before you jumped in, or was it you were just learning and experiencing the whole thing?
I still am. Yeah, no, it was very much like, I'm all of like Arturo, Kabir, and I were all learning together. We had a guide. His name is Jorge Francisco Castillo. He is the founder of Fandango Fronterizo, and he himself um, came out of, actually, he was librarian, and he was also a classical guitarist. So he too had 12 years before just found out about Son Jarocho. So he has, knows a lot about it, and he knows, everybody, and he's super passionate about it. So he was sort of our guide on this journey.
I love that.
And we found out a lot from him, and I continue to, actually.
What are some things maybe you learned about yourself along the way while making the film?
Well, you know what I learned? I learned that, I really love life, and I really love people. And, we're faced with so many hurdles and so many struggles in our lives, and we have hurts, and, all these things kind of build up, and we forget, how beautiful and extraordinary our lives are, no matter what difficulties we're facing. And that's one of the things I learned from these Son Jarocho masters, because they live in areas where the most violence occur. You hear about the drug violence and the cartel violence.
Yes.
And Mexico has a lot of that, and then that region in particular. And their whole philosophy is that they're using their music and these fandangos, which is bring community together, to reclaim their right to happiness and joy and love.
It's great.
And their influence, their love, their openness, their joy for life, under the greatest hardships at times, really awakened that within me as well.
I love that. That must have been very emotional.
It was. I was constantly crying.
Oh,
For joy,
Sure. Yeah.
And watching the film, you'll see it's opening. It's heart opening.
Yeah.
It opens your heart because it's about love of life. That is if we took the theme of the film all the way down to the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
and and it is that love of life that inspired Jorge to have this festival on both sides of the border to try and create greater harmony between our countries.
Yes, which we need.
Yes, exactly.
Terribly, yeah. What else would you like people to know about the film without giving too much away?
Well, I'd like them to know that, sometimes we watch a film because we're familiar with it. It's comfortable. It's telling a story that we know, and, in a new way.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, I do believe that while Fandango at the Wall, it is an adventure film in a sense, like a musical adventure. So there is something to hang on to. It's like a road trip film in a sense. So there's some things that you can hang on to, but it really is an opportunity for discovery and for learning something new, and for learning about, different kinds of people, discovering what we have in common with them and what's different about them.
Sure.
So it was a musical adventure. And I would, hope that no matter, if they start watching it, it kind of feels like, oh, I don't know who these people are, and they're Mexicans, that they just stay with it. And I promise you, you will learn who they are, and you will fall in love with them.
I was going to say, it really opens your mind and your heart to humanity.
Exactly.
And
the other thing that I will say about it also is that it is a hopeful film. And I am, an optimist. And I think it does come from this joy of, our lives. And so I think what I would also like to share is that I think that they will feel good once they finish watching the film. It's an uplifting experience.
I love it. One question I didn't ask you is, when did you know you wanted to become a director? What was your path to where you are now?
Well, I was brought up in Israel until I was 7. And so I did not see television until we moved first to England. So my first, I only saw TV for the first time when I was about 8. And so my mother liked to go to films, but my very first film I saw was a drive-in. We were staying at a hotel near the beach, and I saw this big giant screen, and I'd never seen that before. And it had a man and a woman kissing, and I sort of was entranced by that. And later I came to find out that it was film. And I always wanted to make films, but I didn't know anyone who did it. And then years later, I studied acting and theater directing, and I was going to NYU, and I went to see a film. I went to film theory class, basically. I took a film theory class. But at that point, I had studied painting, which I loved, and choreography. I was going to be a choreographer. I loved to dance, and I sculpture, and so I did theater, so I enjoyed all the different arts. And when I saw this film by Nicholas Rowe called Don't Look Now, and if you ever,
I'll have to look it up.
it's a good one to see again. It's
Okay.
a really great movie. It has the best love scene that you've ever seen with Julie Christie and Donald Sutherland. Anyways, I was watching that film. I suddenly noticed, this is like painting, and editing's kind of like dancing, and there's music and acting and like all these art forms. And that's when I realized I had this epiphany. I was like, wow, I'm a filmmaker. And that's how it all started.
That's amazing. Where can people find out more about you and the film?
Well, we have a website called Fandango. You can actually go to fandangoatthewall.com. It's actually called fandangowall.com. But if you put Fandango at the Wall, it will take you there. And then I have a website, vardabar-kar.com, if people want to, dig a little deeper into some of the other stuff I do. I do other like short form. I just finished doing a PSA campaign for AIDS Walk New York and San Francisco.
Oh, great. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So
I was going to say is for people that are watching that are screenwriters, filmmakers, directors, what would you say to them right now? Because it's so hard with what's going on with COVID.
Well, what I would say is this is a great opportunity to find out about other filmmakers and other artists. For example, I'm on the board of New Filmmakers LA. And once a month, we have a film festival with panels. It's a great opportunity to discover what other filmmakers are doing, to learn from, people in the industry, because there's more access now than ever to all of this information. And also to really dig deep and really figure out what lights you up. Like, what do you really want to do? Like, I only do these big projects at the point where I feel like I have to, but it takes time. It takes time to sit with it and to kind of really realize like what is your purpose? Because we can get so caught up in like wanting to do it, like I really need to be a filmmaker, I really want to make films, but like it's more than just the making of it. What is the story that you're telling, and how does it nurture you, and how does it nurture the world?
Yes.
So this is a really, I think, valuable time to contemplate that, to read stuff and just to kind of find like relight your passion and get clear on your intention.
Yes. I loved hearing about your background because I feel like nothing in education is a waste. You had all these different interests, and sometimes we end up applying those interests or that work ethic or whatever it is to what we do later in life.
Absolutely. And like, I'll just give one more example, in regards to what to do next. I just saw like a little ad on Instagram actually for some kind of a gear that they've developed. It looks like it's like on an arm, and then you put your cell phone on it, and so it's kind of at a distance, and you can do all sorts of moves with it. And so I mean, normally I would see that and I'd kind of go, I don't know who uses that, but now it's like, what can I do with a tool like that under these circumstances?
Yes.
I've always been really intrigued by the people who do our gardening. When I say our, I mean the neighborhood.
Yes.
Like, what are their stories? Like yesterday, I was speaking with one of the gardeners who gardens next door, and he's wearing a mask. He must have been in his early 20s. And he said hi, and I just stopped and we started chatting. And here he is, he was talking about being with the plants and the trees and what it teaches him. And then he said, but what I really want to do, I'm going to school, I want to be an English teacher.
Oh, that's great.
And then one day he said, when I'm 50 or 60, I want to be a professor, like, this guy he saw in a movie or something. And he said, that's such a dignified position. Well, it's just so out of the box. Like the moment you sit down and speak with people.
Right.
So
people don't take
do it with this kind of rig and do my own little movie.
I was going to say, people don't take the time like you did to really get to know people. They just make an assumption and they don't look at people on a human level. And you might be
Yes, and
missing, you know, they think when people were told, at least when I was little, don't talk to strangers. I grew up in New York. Don't talk to strangers. I think talking to strangers is great.
I do too. I do too. I mean, you know, I can kind of take it to the extreme. For example, once we went on a kind of a road trip in Romania with my father, who was Romanian. And at one point we stopped in a village, and my father was with my husband and our daughters, and he was somewhere else. And I kind of wandered off because I saw these really cool looking kind of gypsies with a wagon and everything. And then they invited me to get on the wagon, and I thought, oh, that would be cool. So I'm like getting on the wagon, and suddenly I see my father in a panic, like running over, you know, before I get swept away by the gypsies, you know.
And you're like, why not?
Exactly. Why can't I go on a ride with the gypsies, you know? But anyway, that's the adventurous, you know, side of me. And that's why I love to make films, because it's every time it's a huge adventure.
Were you like that as a child?
Yes, I've always been like that. I mean, when I lived in Israel, I used to just wander off on my own. I'd go everywhere. Even when I lived in New York in high school, I would sneak out, you know, go to the village and like listen to Stan Getz. I met Dizzy Gillespie. I'd like go on my own, and I just have adventures and meet people. It's something that, and I always have loved culture and mixing cultures.
Yes.
I think it's really important. I've always thought that since I was little. I think it's because we traveled so much and I've lived in different continents. And
yes.
That I just think there's something really beautiful about our differences. And then and coming together and getting and exploring, it makes life so much richer to know different types of people and cultures.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've always been like that. Always.
Well, and that's definitely New York City. It's just the melting pot of everyone, you know.
Yes, yes.
What high school did you go to?
I lived here for a little bit when I was growing up. So I actually went to La Cañada High School for 6 months. And I went to Beverly Hills High School for 6 months, which was a shocker.
Wonder why. Okay.
And then I moved to New York City, and I went to Dalton High School.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, I got a scholarship, but it was like, it's a very privileged, you know, extraordinary school. It was amazing.
That's great. It's right in Manhattan, right?
Yes, it is. It's on 89th Street.
Okay. I lived at East 86.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so we were, you know, I lived in that area as well, actually. Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Well, stay well. And I really enjoyed talking to you. And I hope to see you face to face as opposed to through Zoom, but this is the next best thing.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.